Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the season preview for season 2024-25. Everton's final season, of course, at Goodison Park, and we'll be discussing that a little bit during the show as well. But loads to look ahead to. Obviously, we're just coming off the back of the pre-season, and the new season gets underway against Brighton on Saturday. So, loads to ponder. Obviously, never a dull moment with Everton. It's been an interesting summer. We'll start with the signings actually, because obviously there's a lot to get through. Obviously,
A lot to unpack. Yeah, there's been a takeover that looked like it was happening, then didn't happen. Now we're back to square one with that. We've had players go, we've had players come in, we've had a manager actually stick around, which is quite rare for Everton nowadays. So yeah, there's just, as you said, never a dull moment. So you want to start with the signings?
we'll start with the signings because obviously that's kind of the big change from last year. Is obviously we weren't sure what we were going to be dealing with the whole takeover situation this summer, and quite frankly, I'd have hoped for it to have been a bit more positive, to be honest with you, than how it's gone. But nonetheless, we have brought some names in, and
I think they've done as well as I think Feltwell and Dyche and whoever it is who's making the decisions in regards to ins and outs transfer wise. I think they've done as well as they could have realistically, considering as you mentioned the stuff that is going on above their heads, like the takeover. Is it happening? Is it not happening? Is it going to be this American owner? Is it going to be this American owner? Is it going to be this person? Blah 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 blah. It's dragging on and it needs resolving. But just in terms of the actual squad, we'll go through the quickly. Who's gone out? Ben Godfrey's gone to Atalanta. Amadou Onana has gone to Aston Villa for a big fee. Andre Gomez has left after his contract's expired. I don't know what's happening with Dele Alli. He was training with the team in the pre-season, even though his contract expired, but it seems to have gone all quiet on his front. I haven't seen him in any recent photos, so I don't know whether he's still training with the first team or in any capacity, or whether he's gone off on his own to do his own individual thing and get a contract with another club. I don't know, but am I missing anyone else? Who else has gone out the door? I
to
think I'm
Villa as
forgetting someone
well.
obvious. Who?
Lewis Dobbin moved to Villa as well.
Oh, yeah, Lewis Dobbin. I knew I was forgetting someone. Dobbin went to Aston Villa as well on a little PSR fiddle. And look who's come in. We've got, I can never say his name.
Tim
I won't.
Iroegbunam.
That's it.
Yeah.
I can remember who he is. I just can't pronounce it. I always make a dog's dinner of it. But he's come in as centre mid for a bit of cover there. We've got Lindstrom, who's a right-sided midfielder. Well, he can play across. I think he can play on either wing, but I think we've signed him predominantly to play him on the right side, and that was something where we were sorely lacking last season. Jack Harrison's come back. Not everyone's a fan of Harrison, but he's got his uses, I think.
I think it's a decent signing to bring him back in.
Yeah, he's come in just a squad filler. I think he showed enough last season to suggest that he could be a squad option for Everton over the course of the season. Who else? We've got another Luke O'Brien. We've signed another centre half. It was a big. Is Jared Branthwaite going to stay? Is Jared Branthwaite going to go to United? He stayed, and it looks like he's going to be staying. And we found that adding Luke O'Brien means we've actually got a bit of cover at centre half now, which is a relief. And who else has come into the squad?
That's all of them except the last one is Ilman Ndiaye.
NDI, that's the one I forgot. Yeah, another forward player who's adds a bit of creativity up top, hopefully, which is again something where we just sorely lacked last season. And overall, would you say the squad is stronger than it was when a few months ago when we finished the season? Or would you say it's weaker?
I'd say it's stronger, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously losing Annan is like a big loss in the midfield, but I'd like to think that we try and replace him, even if it's only on loan or something between now and the end of the window. But I feel like all the other weaknesses that we already had, I feel like we've tried to address them at the very least.
Well, some of them centre back, but centre midfield, final third. I know some people would have liked another. Would have again. There's a situation going on with Calvert-Lewin, isn't there? Is he going to be here for the post after the window shuts? It's still up in the air. If he's not here, then we absolutely need to be signing an out-and-out number 9. because I don't think people would be confident just going into the season with Beto and Committee, and Committee's injured for a spell as well. On top of that, full back position for me, both sides. That's still somewhere where we are very, very weak, and we are one injury away from a potential disaster. Now, I understand you can't get every bit of business you want to get done in one window. You can't fill all the gaps in your squads, and there were other areas where we had to prioritise, e.g., the top end of the pitch, because we didn't score enough goals last year, and we had to obviously get a couple of midfielders in to replace the players who were going. Your Gomez's, your Onanas, whether you rated them or you didn't rate them, they played an awful lot of games, but for Everton over the last 2 years between them. So we just needed warm bodies, but full back was still our only options, Michaelenko. And on the right side, we've got Ashley Young and Seamus Coleman, who are both of them have seen far, far better days. And if it wasn't for the squads, for the club's perilous financial situation, they probably wouldn't be getting new deals the way they did. And Nathan Patterson, who just remains a bit of an enigma for Everton. We signed him to be sort of the long-term solution. Since we signed him a few years ago, he's shown very, very little to suggest that he's going to be, a stalwart in Everton's team. Maybe he's on his last chance now. Maybe he will get another run in the side if he stays injury free. We don't know, but he's just another player who, so far, Sean Dyche hasn't been able to kind of mould into anything. So, yeah, for me, I would say the squad is roughly at the same level. It's stronger in some areas where it needs to strengthen, but there's still glaring holes in other areas. So,
with that in mind, I think for me, the only position that we need to really sign between now and the end of this window, as you said, I think is a right back. I think it's not ideal having Ashley Young as a backup, but he probably have to fill the gap at left back. Coleman as a backup on the right, and personally, I'd be bringing in a new long-term right back. To be honest, I'd be looking to either sell or loan Patterson if we got a chance.
Ideally, but it's whether we've got any budget to go and get another player for the fullbacks. I don't think we have, unless we sell someone. I know we don't want to sell Branthwaite, and I think United have finally moved on from him now. They went and signed that De Ligt from Bayern Munich, and they got another kid from Lille a few weeks ago. So I think any offers we had for Branthwaite early in the season or early in the summer are off the table now. So I think the only scenario where we go and sign more fullback cover is if we manage to sell Calvert-Lewin, and then we've got to use that money on a striker. So whatever we get for Calvert-Lewin, I imagine if we do sell him, I can't imagine it will be a lot because he's in the final year of his contract, and then we'd have to split that into getting two more bodies in different positions. So I don't know. I think Everton's squad is in a bit of an awkward place at the moment. It's had some major surgery done to it, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I think Sean Dyche and Fell well know that, and they'll probably have still other targets who they plan on hopefully bringing into the club in maybe 12 months' time. The people who they're looking at now, who they hope they can get next summer. Let's just hope there's a cheeky loan between now and deadline day. I know they're still getting linked to Calvin Phillips a lot, aren't we? So maybe we'll see him rock up, or maybe, as you said, we'll just see some right back come in from somewhere on a cheap loan from Europe. We've done it before, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be the plan for the rest of the window, unless you say like Calvert-Lewin does go. But at this moment in time, I'm not convinced he does, to be honest with you.
Well, apparently there's stories that maybe he'd be open to signing a new deal now. I think this is pure speculation. I think both he and the club thought a few weeks ago, back in when we were back in July and early June, that if we kind of put a for sale sign on him, if we make it known in football and circles that we're willing to listen to an offer for him. I think we didn't quite get the amount of interest that we were expecting. I know Newcastle got linked, but then they didn't follow. I don't think they ever officially bid for him. They didn't follow through on any interest that they might have had. And I haven't heard any other credible stories linking Calvert-Lewin anywhere else. So I wouldn't be shocked if both Calvert-Lewin and the club, Everton, have turned around, looked at each other and thought, well, we thought a couple of weeks ago the ideal scenario for both parties would be if we just move you on. But it looks like no one's going to come in and put their hand in the pocket. So I guess we're stuck with each other for now. And the best thing for you to do is just sign another short-term deal, and maybe we'll sell next summer if you get a few goals this season. That's what I think will happen. I think Calvert-Lewin, if he doesn't go before deadline day, we'll get to September, October, and he'll sign another 2-3 year deal. I think he'll realise that any move if he wants to move away from Everton to a, not even necessarily a better club, just a move he fancies to a club that he thinks, yeah, you know what, I really think I can get my head down and do well there. I can get back in the England team playing in that squad. I think if that's going to materialise, I think he might realise that he needs to have a very good season for Everton, getting double-figure goals again, which he hasn't managed for a few years now because of injuries and loss of form. So I think Calvert-Lewin will probably sign a new deal in the next couple of weeks when the dust settles a little bit and there's no more time for clubs to come in on transfer deadline day and maybe try and pinch him on the cheap.
That's it. I mean, I'm not. I'm hoping he won't do like a Ross Barkley. I think that's what everyone's nervous about with him.
Well, yeah, I understand fans are nervous that he could end up walking out the door for nothing, but people got to remember we did have an offer on the table for Barkley from Chelsea in that summer before he left. He went in the January in the end. We had an offer for I think it was 30 million, and Everton accepted it, and then the player and Chelsea, or at the very least Barkley's agent and Chelsea, decided, you know what, you're injured anyway. If you come down and to Chelsea right now, you're not going to play for months. You might as well just go back up to Everton, get yourself fit, do all your rehab, and we'll come back for you in a couple of months and save ourselves a few quid. And you can just spend the meantime just rehabbing and not having to worry about having to move club and all the little things that come along with that, like finding somewhere to live and setting yourself up in a new place far away from home, which is what he had to do when he left Everton. So I think Barkley really did, or at the very least, Barkley's agent did rat Everton. It felt like Barkley's agent at the least went out of his way to help cost Everton money and didn't care one jolt. Calvert-Lewin, I don't know. Hopefully he's not like that. Players have ran down the contracts before because they want to go on. Remember Peter going to Spurs, didn't he? I'm not going to, crap on a player just because he thinks, I don't want to be at Everton anymore. I want to try something else. But it's more about how you leave, not more about the reasons you want to leave. I think Calvert-Lewin, if he is to go, as long as he's up front and he doesn't play any games, then I'd wish him the best of luck when he does leave, if he does.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to the team, I think that's kind of where I'd say generally we're in a stronger position than we were last year. I know you mentioned the fullback situation, but I think to be honest with you, we're not much worse off than we were last year, and I know that's still not a good position to be in, but apart from
Well,
losing Godfrey, who didn't really do the business as a fullback anyway, we haven't really lost anyone.
I still don't. I don't look at Everton's team the same way I didn't last season and think, you know what, that's one of the weakest teams in the league. They're really going to struggle. I didn't expect anything from us. I wasn't thinking at any point in the season, even before the point deductions, that we had any chance, we had any sniff of getting into Europe, or and I thought it was very unlikely we could even get in the top half. And then obviously the point deductions happened, and that just extinguished all discussion of that, and it just became another, relegation dogfight. But as far as I'm concerned, that Everton squad last season, with all its faults and all its, bad luck, still got 48 points. It's not,
Not a bad tally, really.
Yeah, they had 8 points taken off them because of, as far as I'm concerned, an absolutely unjust and corrupt system. And so any team that gets 48 points, for me, is very, very comfortable in the Premier League. And there's no reason to think that unless they lose a big signing, a big key player for themselves, then there's no reason to think a team that got 48 points would drop off tremendously and go back in the relegation dogfight. And the only thing Everton have done this summer in terms of weakening themselves is sell Amadou Onana. We've kept Branthwaite, who a lot of people thought is the more important player. So yeah, even if you think was the exact same strength as we were last season, I don't think we should go into this season with any sort of real fear of getting relegated. Obviously, I know things can happen. Players can get injured, and you can leave yourself in a dire situation, or you just have a bad run of luck, and you don't pick up as many points in the first month or two as you think you should do. But I'm not going into this season, fearful of relegation like I was back in 22 and 23. I'm just thinking we're in for another hopefully comfortable if uneventful season, which is what we should have had last season. And circumstances and corrupt Premier League officials not gone out of their way to make sure that Everton had to suffer.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens this year. I'm not completely confident that relegation worries are a thing in the past, but I think we'll end up on. I'm confident that I think we will stay up. I think
I'm confident we'll stay up and we'll stay up comfortably. It's just I think even if we have a good start to the season, I think people need to be prepared to rein themselves in a bit. I still don't think this Everton squad is anywhere close to challenging for Europe or even getting in the top half. I think all we've got to do is aim for 50 points this season. Let's just have another year where we think, right, we got 48 points last season with a very limited squad in terms of output, in terms of how many goals we could score. We had a squad that had massive holes in it and had, inconvenient injuries to key players like Yatakore's in the middle of January when we needed it, or the winter period, whenever it was when we needed him. He got injured. Michaelenko got injured for the final few games, didn't he, after the derby? We had no right backs. The right back situation was still a farce, and it looks like it's going to be a farce again this season. But all things considered, the club did very well for itself in terms of staying clear of any danger. In terms of what was within their control, the whole reason Everton were in any danger at all last season was because of, as we've said, men in boardrooms. So yeah, I'll ask you this: as we get ready to round off this section, who do you think is going to be the surprise package of the season? A player who you think, I think he's going to do really well this season. People are going to be really surprised. Or who do you hope to see do well?
Well, I'll go in. I think this just ties in with a couple of the segments. That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask in a bit anyway.
Oh, go on.
But the other thing we were going to talk about was pre-season. But based on pre-season, I'm actually quite confident for Tim Iroegbunam. I think I thought he'd be coming in. I thought he might get some game time because obviously our midfield is weak, but it looks like it could actually be good enough to play at the minute. From what I've seen, he looks like physically at least very capable, and like
that's a good point. I was the bits I've seen of him. He does. How old is he? 20, 21?
I think he's only 20.
Very young. Yeah, he's very, very, very young. I knew when we got him that he probably wasn't going to go into the under-23s, that he was going to be in and around the first team like Dobbin was. Dobbin got some minutes last season, probably would have got even more had he not got injured, but Dobbin was not a starter for I don't think, in any supporters' first choice team. And I imagine the same was going to be the same for this kid. He'll come in where and when we need him, sort of thing. He might be the second or third player off the bench option for us, but he's looked very sort of mature and sort of like he's physically like he can hold his own. A lot of players at that age, even if they've got ability, when they step up to men's football, when they step away from under 23 level, it takes them a good while to just adjust to men's football. They get knocked off the ball. They don't realise that they haven't got any time. It takes time for them to gel, but it looks like it's a lad who's got a good head on his shoulders, who looks like he's not daunted by the jump up in terms of quality at all. So yeah, I'm confident that, or I'm hopeful that we're going to be really, really grateful we got him, because when we signed him, that just looked off. Yeah, that's just a little PSR fiddle we've got with Aston Villa. No one should be expecting anything from him, really. That was just to help us out in terms of balancing the books. I don't really think he's going to come in and Dyche is going to be having any great plans for him, but he's impressed in pre-season and that's all he can do, and hopefully he gets the opportunity and takes them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I do hope that Dyche puts a bit more faith in the kids this year. That's one thing I think that would be the real surprise package if Dyche backed the kids for me. And if he did, I think we'd be better off for it.
Well, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but also from the other point of view, what kids did we have last season who were chomping at the bit to get in the team, and Dyche just wouldn't give them a chance? Maybe Dobbin. You could argue maybe Dobbin deserved a bit of a run at various points, but again, and I think Dobbin probably would have got more minutes had he not got injured. But I didn't. Everyone knows how I feel about Ashley Young, and I do think there were times when the likes of Nathan Patterson maybe should have been given another chance over Ashley Young, who we know what he can and can't do for us. But I do get your point that I hope Dyche doesn't pick old favourites as much as he did last season. But I don't really think there was any sort of like youngsters who were under 21 who we had out on loan somewhere, or we had in the under 23s who you think, you know what, why can't he give him a go instead of just relying on Jack Harrison on the right, or relying on Ashley Young at fullback, or just throwing Decore up behind Calvert-Lewin when he's woefully out of form. I kind of get that argument, and those are criticisms that get thrown at the manager, but in his defence, I think a lot of the time he didn't have any obvious replacements. I think he had to kind of work at what he had for most of it. But no, that's a good point. Hopefully we see a young player or two whether it's this new kid or whether it's someone else who just comes out of the academy like Harrison Armstrong. I know he's getting a lot of attention at the moment. He's looked good in pre-season. He's been training with the first team. Hopefully there is a young player or two just breaks through to the first team and gets the fans excited, and you think, you know what, that's a glimpse of the future of them, and that's what Everton could be an Everton player in 3 or 4 years, and he could be the dog's bollocks. We kind of haven't had that the last few years. We haven't had any sort of like super kid to kind of cling on to, thinking, right, if we can just keep him, other than Branthwaite, if we can just keep him and mould him and get him to sign a long-term deal, then we're going to be all right in the next few seasons. So
that's it. I think like they're the sort of players that I'd like to see, like the young lads really like have an impact if we can, because that's like it always creates a bit of optimism. Even when Dobbin scored against Chelsea, everyone was buzzing. Like, and
yeah,
he probably wasn't at the level we wanted, but it was still like a bit of optimism there.
yeah. Just something fresh. I think that's what the point I was trying to make. Fans want to see something fresh, whether it's a new signing hitting the ground running, whether it's a kid coming through and breaking into the first team and making himself undroppable, or whether it's just a manager maybe changing things up from a tactical point of view and then it works. Fans just like freshness sometimes, even something really small, like Dice changing into the trackie, wasn't it? Fans are buzzing off it.
Just things that I think what it is when you get into a bad run of form and things feel really stale, you need to do that. Whether it's
Yeah,
like sometimes it can be the manager makes the right decision. Sometimes it can even just happen by chance. But like, it could be a fella coming onto the pitch and chaining himself to the goalpost. So like, it could be any look. But these are the kind of things like sometimes you just need something to change the situation. Literally, like
yeah,
I on that note, I think we have made good signings, and you just got to hope that the squad in general has enough about it to stay out of any real trouble this year.
yeah.
Um,
And there's too much to ask for maybe a little cup run or something. Just, yeah, as you said, get fans excited over something rather than. I don't want this last season of Goodison to just feel like another slog. And it just feels like every season we've had since Ancelotti left, at least, has just felt like a slog for varying
yeah,
reasons where fans just want to get ourselves mathematically safe and then just switch off for months on end and not have to think about Everton. Being an Evertonian just hasn't been enjoyable for the vast majority of the last 3-4 seasons at all.
it's not
So we want that to change, hopefully.
absolutely. We'll move on to the pre-season. What do you make of the pre-season? Obviously, you got off to a really poor start. I think we lost to Salford and then lost to Coventry.
I don't being honest with you, mate. I don't read much into pre-seasons.
You need
Only
the
thing pre-season for me, the only thing that you can read that pre-seasons are really good for are to try out a new tactic, whether it's a new formation or playing a player in a different position. Just see if that if you think that's going to gel or click. Normally, you can tell very very quick whether certain players are comfortable in certain roles within the team. If you want to change it from what they normally do, or if you want to just change the whole system. Pre-season's good for that, and it's also good, I think, for figuring out players who are past it and you can't rely on them in the future. We had a pre-season, a memorable one a few years ago. I think it was Marco Silva's first year with Brands, when we had a lot of the holdovers from Ronald Koeman and Martinez's sides, like your Ashley Williamses and your Mo Bezages and players like that who you were playing pre-season and they were just getting ran everywhere, and you thought, yeah, these are players who we just have to get out the club. Like the new management team were probably willing to give them a fresh look and give them another chance. And look, if you look at them in pre-season, it's only reconfirming what us, the fans, already thought about them, which is they're not going to be any use over the course of the season. So hopefully, the manager and his coaches are looking at this, thinking, yeah, if this fella's getting ran everywhere by some no-mark French team in the Alps on a training exercise, or he's playing against a League One or a Championship side, and he's making really not just looking unfit. Said a lot of it's fitness, but if he's just making fundamental key decisions, like he's losing his marker really easily, or he's giving the ball away really cheaply, and you just think this is a player. Imagine if he was making these mistakes in a top flight game. I think that's all pre-season's really good for, looking at finding out what players' limitations are and finding out which players you just definitely feel you can't rely on over the court when the season gets up and running. And I think we've kind of done that over this season, but over this pre-season. But again, with the situation we're in, we're probably going to have to just stick with these players who we think are not good enough because we haven't got the dough to replace them.
And with that in mind, we'll get on to who's been the notable underperformers. I think we've got a couple of obvious ones.
In pre-season,
Yeah,
I mean, really underperformers. I haven't watched every pre-season game. I didn't watch Roma. I watched the highlights of Preston and a little bit of the Coventry game, and I didn't see the one we had. I know we had a behind closed doors one against Motherwell a few days ago, but I think it's hard. I think it's hard to read into things like that. What player was people looking at thinking, okay, I hope he smashes it in pre-season, and then he didn't? I don't really think there's anything. I think the only player who's um, got people excited in pre-season is that Ndai, isn't it? And that was based on what? A little cameo against Roma where he got on the ball and dribbled a bit. So I really think there's not much to read into pre-season. I think if we went out on one of these fancy tours in America and we played some glamour friendlies against your Real Madrids or your AC Milans, like a lot of Premier League teams do, then yeah, pre-season would be kind of exciting when you're staying up in the middle of the night to watch John Stones do a little chip penalty in a shootout against Juventus. But when you're just having a back to basics pre-season where you go riding bikes around Germany or something or Austria, and then you come back and play some lower league side just to get fit, I don't think there's much to read into it.
yeah. Well, with that in mind, I think like it's everything you'd imagine it would have been. I think like the underperformance for me have obviously been the usual suspects. Your Mason Holgate, like players like that, like just like as you said, hammer home the fact that they shouldn't really be playing for Everton in any capacity. And then on a more positive note, the new players I think have been some of the better performers. Mentioned before Tim Iruegbanam, NDI,
Yeah, Lindstrom
Lindstrom.
hit that. He hit the cracking free kick against Preston, didn't he? And
Yeah, that's right. And even Jake O'Brien's actually chipped in with a goal.
Jake O'Brien, I'm sure. Yeah, I knew I got his name wrong earlier on. Sorry, Jake.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you
I think I
called him
called
like
him. I
Liam
think I
or
called him
something.
Lewis. I think I called him Lewis. Lewis O'Brien. I know a Lewis O'Brien. That's why I've got their names mixed up. I know someone called Lewis O'Brien, and I was thinking about him. Sorry, Jake. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, the pre-season's just been a typical Everton pre-season in terms of it's just very, very unglamorous, isn't it? They go riding bikes around some hotel, like um, in the Swiss Alps, not the Swiss Alps, in sort of the Swiss mountains, somewhere where you imagine they've got blisters on their feet after the finish, and the manager makes them run laps and laps of the training ground. It's something David Moyes used to do for all the Dower Davy shouts and all that, and the fact that the club didn't really feel very exciting under David Moyes in terms of kind of how he approach things from the logistical point of view. He didn't take the club abroad very often, and the club hasn't gone abroad much like properly to go to compete in these glamour friendly tournaments like you see Liverpool and Arsenal and United all doing. But those things are expensive, aren't they? And you need to have brand recognition in order to do that. And Everton haven't got any of that in the minute. So why, if you were an organizer on one of these tournaments, would you invite Everton? You wouldn't. So the best thing to do in that case is just go back to basics and run the players into the floor and get them absolutely fighting fit, which is what I think Sean Dyche has been aiming to do.
yeah, definitely. We've got a couple of little points to touch on now. Anyway, a couple of quick questions. Who do you think our player of the year will be?
Um, so, yeah, player of the year in terms of someone who I expect to be good and he should be delivering. I think it'll be Jared Branthwaite. I think
Brantwaite.
Jared
Yeah.
Branthwaite's only going to get better. I think he was very arguably our player of the season last year. I think it was either him or Pickford, wasn't it? Again,
Mm-hmm.
but I think Jared Branthwaite will come into his own this season, and next summer he'll be getting the likes of your Real Madrids and your Cities knocking on the door, not just Manchester United. I think Jared Branthwaite, if he can avoid injury, pray to God he avoids injury, because it would just be Everton's luck for something really bad to happen to him.
But
If he can get 30 plus games under his belt, I think the world's Jared Branthwaite oyster. I think he's really going to come into his own and make himself an established England international over the next 12 months.
hopefully, um, who would you say our top scorer is going to be? Always a difficult one with the lack of goals, but who would you go with?
If he stays, Calvert-Lewin. If he doesn't, I don't know, maybe Lindstrom. Lindstrom becomes a first team starter. Maybe I'm just willing that. I'm just willing that into existence. But I saw that cracking free kick he took and thought he should be on all our set pieces to going into the season. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but if it doesn't, if for whatever reason it's not him, then I'd like to think maybe Lindstrom or McNeil will chip in amongst the goals, because McNeil had a good first season in terms of his goals. I think he finished on 8, didn't he? And I think he dropped off to about 3 or 4 last year. So I'm hoping McNeil gets back amongst the goals. But yeah, it'll be one of our attacking main three, and I think that will be what our main front three is going to be for the majority of the season: McNeil, Lindstrom, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
And finally, where do you think we'll finish the season?
It's hard to know position-wise because the amount, points tallies always lead to different positions. We finished 8th one year with 48, and then we should have finished on 48 last season. And if we had, we'd have finished in 12th, 13th. I think Everton will finish on 48 or 49 points. Again, I think we'll match the points tally of last season, and then it just works out. It'll just depend on how tight the table is around us, sort of thing. So I'll go for 11th or 12th on 48 or 49 points. We'll have the season we should have had last season.
I was going to say 11th or 12th myself, but even like as low as down as like 14th, I'd take it, to be honest with you. Just as long as we're not in any serious danger, I think that's a decent season. With the situation we've got at the moment, I think I'd take that.
Yeah, I probably would as well. We don't want any more relegations battles or anxieties in Goodison's last season. If you can't have a season of glory, like challenging for something, then at least have a nice, comfortable season where there's just no reason to feel nervous.
Yeah, that's
see it off. Because at the end, the last home game of the season, we were going to have, like, I remember a few years ago, when the bowling ground shut at West Ham and they got all the ex-legends out, and it was one of these events where even after the game had finished at like 5:30, the coverage went on until well into the evening. Sky kind of had like a special sort of broadcast where they had all the usual people, the pundits and the presenters, and the fans stayed behind. So the live broadcast at the bowling ground carried on until about 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening, and they just had loads of sort of special West Ham legends coming on the pitch, and they had like events on, and they had like showing old clips of like classic games. So I think
something like that.
Yeah, so when that eventually happens back when we get to May of next year and Goodison's closing, then I want that to kind of go off without a hitch. I don't want there to be anything on the game like, oh, we need to win this game for us to stay up, or we need to win this game to avoid this or whatever. I just want Everton to have a nice, comfortable season, and then we can sort of we can plan for the end well in advance without other things being on our mind. That's the point I want to make. I want the last 3 months of the season to just all be about the final day and preparation for that, and we haven't got any reason to be anxious about anything else.
Definitely is to that. Well, there you have it, guys. We'll leave it at that. Let us know your opinions on the season going into it. Give us a comment, give us a like, and subscribe for more content. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching on the Toffee Blues.